What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and it's time to talk about the latest album from folk and black metal artist MYRKUR Folkesange via Relapse Records. But before I do that, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and stick around after the video because there's plenty more content to enjoy. Now, Amelie Brun is a musician that has made a name for herself across genres over the past 2 decades. She got her start as a singer-songwriter in the 2000s playing piano and guitar, in addition to her obvious strengths in the vocal department. It actually wasn't until 2015's M that she ventured into metal territory, sparking a bit of an argument amongst the cult community as to whether she was simply a mere pop interloper in the black metal scene, arguably forging the way for more modern and increasingly popular acts like Poppy. But she pressed on with the stripped-down EP Mausoleum and a follow-up full-length in 2017, earning stripes with critics along the way as her sound matured into a more balanced blend of these harsh tones with her Danish folk roots. Folkesange sees this progression continue with 12 tracks that are pure Scandinavian folk through and through, with all traces of cold, harsh black metal left at the wayside, trading distorted guitars for nickel harp, lyre, and mandolin, along with expansive cinematic production from Heilung member and musical collaborator Christopher Juhl. And speaking of cinematic, you may have noticed that I'm not in my usual set here. This is kind of a temporary backdrop for sort of a secondary space that I'm going to have to kind of utilize at some times. But it's kind of appropriate that my first video with this Skyrim backdrop applies to an album that definitely conjures the same type of imagery. I listen to this album and I think of things like Lord of the Rings and being among the elves. I think of Galadriel singing these songs. It really is amazing soundtrack music, and filmmakers and video game developers should definitely take notice because this would be perfect for something like The Witcher, both atmospherically and lyrically. A great example is the opening track Ella, which opens with a very subtle drum that actually sounds like a heartbeat, and it really just expands into this stunning journey with hauntingly morose strings and layered vocal melodies that sound like ghosts calling from the past or sirens from the sea. And thinking back to the video game world again, I'm also hearing parallels to the Silent Hill 4 track, Room of Angel. Then there are tracks that take a folksier turn. This one has a more whimsical feel to it with its jaunty mandolin and more upbeat singing style. It's something I could imagine singing to a smiling child as they get up in the morning. On the flip side of that, we have more sorrowful sounding content, like Leaves of Yggdrasil. This one got me back into kind of a Game of Thrones mood, thinking back to the fabled Reigns of Castamere. Hopefully this one won't lead to another horrific bloodbath. Under the shady green leaves of Yggdrasil. House Carpenter takes me back to days long past listening to the likes of Juhl's understated debut album, The Cranberries, and even Enya, which was a favorite of my mother when she would clean the house. Well, I couldn't marry the king, started dear. She would have married me. And finally, closing track Winter, though quite lovely in its simple piano, draws some very interesting comparisons. First off, the opening melody is basically that sad Pixar Up theme that we hear so often in memes about something going wrong. But then again, this one opens up into more of like an Edward Scissorhands, Tim Burton vibe with the choral elements. But teasing aside, this is a truly stunning vision of folk music that takes me away to far off places and fills me with a sense of wonder. It never fails to captivate over its runtime, and I continue to enjoy watching Amelie's progression over time. Whether intentional or not, it's kind of a tricky thing she's pulled off. MYRKUR initially stirred up a lot of feelings and drew plenty of attention, both positive and negative, from the metal community, and then despite slowly drifting away from those elements, has continued to maintain their attention while falling into a niche that might have otherwise gone largely unnoticed. I give Folkesange a 9 for enjoyability. It's pretty damn consistent. I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss some of the black metal elements to punch things up, but even so, it manages to remain pretty engrossing. I give it a 9 for musicianship. This was a tough scale for an album like this one, since compositions and instrumentation by nature are purposefully pretty sparse. But for this particular genre, in terms of what they were going for and in terms of atmosphere and feeling, they've definitely nailed it. And I give it a 7 for innovation. Pretty average stuff overall for folk music as a whole. Not a lot of surprises, but excellent nonetheless. Average that out for an 8.3. It's a solid B for MYRKUR. Get it again via Relapse Records. Also, if you are a particular fan of this style, you should also check out 2 other projects I've become quite fond of. I mentioned Heilung earlier, and they are another Danish group that focus on pagan imagery, runology, and other historical contexts to create highly atmospheric soundscapes with everything from chanting to percussion that utilizes real bones, from my understanding. They have a number of albums you can check out via Bandcamp and Season of Mist, but I am particularly fond of their live album and watching the accompanying videos since they have quite the stage show. And then there's Ols, which is a one-woman dark neo-folk project out of Poland that we have actually covered a few times on metaltrenches.com, and her material can also be found on Bandcamp. But she has a new album called Widma on the horizon. It's coming out April 17th via Pagan Records. Her focus is primarily on polyphonic vocal harmonies and sparse ritualistic instrumentation, so definitely check her out too. But as always, just thanks for watching. I really appreciate you continuing to come back here. And again, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Give us a comment. Share it with others. Hop down the description. You can find links to all of our social media, the email newsletter that I send out personally every Friday to keep you up to date with everything at metaltrenches.com. And also, if you feel like you're really getting added value every time you're watching these videos or listening to the podcast, then definitely consider contributing just $1 a month to our Patreon or Subscribe Star. It really makes a difference in helping me cover the overhead costs and continue to justify the time that I put into this. But, and again, stick around. Plenty other videos to check out. Our most recent podcast was actually Chris and I talking through what we felt are our favorite black metal bands of the past decade. And I've also got full album review videos for the new Code Orange, and another one coming up real soon for the latest album from Igor. But yeah, plenty of that, tier lists, all sorts of great stuff. Stick around, but for now, this is Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.